Now, on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app, O'Connor and Company.
Oh, yes, I know you're expecting the Monster Mash, but if it's Friday, we're in love. Yeah, we might throw in some Halloween music, too. Happy Spooky Day, everybody. It's Halloween, the 31st day of October. You know what that means. It's the 31st day of the government shutdown.
Yes, that's spooky enough.
Exactly. It's O'Connor and Company with Larry and Patrice. Patrice, I like your Halloween costume. Well done, you.
Well, thank you, Larry. As you see, the soccer ball in one hand,
Yes.
and I've got my mobile chair right upstairs in my stadium cup and my fleece blankie. What could I possibly be?
You're a D.C. area soccer mom.
Amen. That's it.
But Patrice, that's your costume every day. It's all right. But without the props. Coming up at 6:05, Sean Kennedy, latest crime stories out of Northern Virginia. 6:35, Delegate Gary Higgins, just in time for next Tuesday's Election Day. 7:05, Greg Pemberton, D.C. Police Union, on the curfew in the nation's capital. 7:15, Josh Bronson of the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Fund and Museum. And then at 7:35, hey, circle this. Come on back. Or just don't go anywhere. How about that? That's a good idea. Because at 7:35, we'll hear the final closing argument from Lieutenant Governor Winsome Sears right here. And then at 8:35, Congressman Jim Jordan of the Judiciary Committee. That's a loaded show. We better get right to it. Patrice, thanks for being here.
Absolutely. Happy Halloween and happy Halloween Friday, everybody.
So yesterday was the big Halloween day at the White House.
Yes.
Trick-or-treaters galore there in front of the president and the first lady. We had Cassie Smedley on yesterday, and she brought her children dressed like the Incredibles to the White House. I saw the pictures. White House looked beautiful. Pumpkins looked great. Orange lighting. Everything was cool. And quite the visual feast, I think, for that. You know, Megan Basham, political commentator and social commentator, put out a really heartfelt tweet, I think, as you saw the president and children of White House staff and other children dressed in their costumes coming out there to do the annual parade of trick-or-treaters in front of the White House's front door. And I want to read what Megan said. She said, I'm honestly sitting here looking at this video thinking about how this man survived 2 assassination attempts, triumphed over the whole of the political establishment and its corrupt law enforcement apparatus, to be handing out candy to kids at the White House tonight. It's wholesome, it's miraculous, and it's something to celebrate. Let's not forget the incredible victories we've won on the right and all we had to overcome to get here. Let's not squander this. And she's so right. You know, it's easy for us all to get sort of caught up in our disagreements, but Trump has sort of become a unifying figure around some basic things that we can all agree on. And the fact that he's, you know, he just flew back from Asia. The man is, you know, pushing 80. He just flew back from Asia after doing all of those things, and now here he is, robust and having a blast, handing out candy at the White House. It's
By the way,
he's having a great
Trump
first year.
It has been. I'll get to President Trump, but I just got to say Melania Trump looked gorgeous in that orange and tan ensemble, which I actually happen to be wearing the same color scheme. And you know, ladies of fashion think alike. But I do think the larger point about President Trump being here to welcome children to the White House, this is the left's nightmare. They tried everything, including assassination attempts, to stop him from entering the White House and bringing back normal life, bringing back American values, bringing back principles that we've, you know, believed in as a nation since our founding, that have been corrupted and destroyed by previous administrations. Most recently, the one that just left the White House. So, you know, I love the pumpkins, I love the decorations, I love seeing President Trump with little kids. I'm hoping I'll get back to the White House with my boys so they could shake his hand, because I think they would really be impressed by him. And I know so many people are.
Yeah, and by the way, just in terms of the nuts and bolts of the trick-or-treating exercise, there were a couple of highlights there that deserve mention. It's all visuals, of course. There's no audio to play this, but you'll remember the iconic moment in the first term where the child was dressed like one of the The Minions, thank you, from Despicable Me. And of course, the Minions have the giant yellow, it was like an inflatable
They do. They look
costume.
like Twinkie heads.
Yeah, and he had a flat head. And, of course, Trump was having fun with it, and he put a candy bar. Because, of course, at the White House, they don't do the minis. They do the full candy bar. He was putting the candy bar on the top of the Minion's head, and it just became this viral. And it was hilarious because he and Melania were having fun. And of course, the kid was probably like, what are you doing? What do you put it in my pumpkin? I put it in my... Anyway, yesterday, maybe they did this on purpose, but parents dressed one of their kids up as a robot. And the robot's little head helmet mask thing had a flat top, and Trump did it again. The candy bar went on top of the robot's flat head. And it was just a very wholesome moment. And he looked like he was having a blast. It was very funny.
You know, I love the word wholesome, Larry, because this family is bringing back normal, wholesome life in America. There's this great clip of Melania Trump. I'll share it on X here at Patrice Pinkfile, but where a little girl was scared of all of the Halloween decorations, and she was crying. And so the First Lady Melania Trump bent down, hugged the little girl, made sure she was okay, and gave her candy. I mean, it's just the humanity of this couple that so many people forget in their quest to try to stop MAGA or stop President Trump and his family to destroy their marriage. How many stories about whether Melania Trump is going to divorce President Trump, whether she's in a abusive relationship, all of the things they've tried to do to smear this family, every angle they've taken, and yet they are back. They're like your grandparents when you stop over at the nice elderly couple in your neighborhood and you bring your kids to them, and they're there just to greet them normal, no weird smelling of little girl's hair on the part of the grandpa, and the grandmother is not slipping, tainted candy in some kids'
handing out
sacks.
baggies of cocaine from Uncle Hunter.
It's
or
normal.
for that matter,
I love
dressed
it.
like the sofa upholstery. You're right. Although to be fair, my grandma looked nothing like Melania Trump. That would have left a vivid impression on me as a child.
Okay.
I'm just saying. You're right. It is, and that moment where, because this little girl, probably 5 years old.
Yeah, about 5, maybe even younger.
They put fun, spooky decorations there, and the girl got sort of overwhelmed by it. And it was dark lighting with flashing lights, and the girl got a little scared. And Melania comforting her was yes, wholesome is absolutely the word. By the way, the winner of that, because the kids looked great in their costumes. And no offense to Cassie Smedley, friend of the program, whose kids looked great in their Incredibles costumes. But one mom brought their child, rolled her up in a wagon, and because her child was just a 1-year-old, barely walking toddler, but the toddler was sitting in this wagon, and the wagon was done up like a McDonald's drive-through restaurant.
Oh, that gets it.
That
gets the crown.
What a brilliant costume idea for POTUS, and yes, 100%. That won the day at the White House. So the bar has been raised, Mom and Dad, as you're planning for your kids' trick-or-treating escapades tonight. McDonald's drive-thru is the one to beat. It's 5:15.
WMAL, making sense of the news. Live from the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios. Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
I don't know. I mean, I don't go in for all the scary Halloween stuff, but it's still fun to, have a spooky day, I suppose. It's 5:16 on O'Connor and Company. Larry and Patrice here, and it's looking like a scary future for a lot of people at CBS News, including Oprah's bestie, Gayle King.
Yes.
As you know, Patrice, Barry Weiss, who left the New York Times because she just wasn't woke enough for them, started her own journalistic endeavor called the Free Press, built a huge subscriber base, built it into a bit of a multi-million-dollar enterprise.
Powerhouse.
So attractive that CBS News now has acquired it for $150 million and then placed Barry Weiss as their new editor-in-chief. She's been in place for about 2 weeks, and earlier this week, a whole round of layoffs were announced, including the dismantling of what was called the Race and Culture Unit at
Very
CBS
good.
News. Yeah. The Race and Culture Unit, by the way, was responsible for context, tone, and intention of news programming.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah.
So it was a DEI filter.
Yeah, exactly. It was the PCAI bot, I suppose, to make sure that all the news was funneled through something to sound like it was written by, Alexandria
Ta-Nehisi
Ocasio-Cortez.
Coates, yes.
Yeah, there you go. So the layoffs have been pretty major, actually. And she's still looking at a shakeup at 60 Minutes. She's looking at possibly bringing in Brett Baer, as we discussed earlier in the week. But now the biggest name, and it was announced earlier this week that former CBS News, well, actually, a current co-host of CBS Evening News, John Dickerson, would be leaving as well. But now, probably the biggest name is Gayle King. Gayle King's contract is up in May, and the New York Post is reporting that she is expected to leave. In fact, she might leave CBS Mornings, the show that she anchors, before her contract expires in May. That'll leave a mark, I think.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so do you...
Well, listen,
what do you think the
King,
fallout will be here?
Not much. Gayle King leaving CBS, I mean, she's in there in the mornings. I'm sure you can slot someone else in, and the viewership is not going to drop because Gayle King is not there. Gayle King is not her bestie, Oprah. Oprah dominated ratings. I don't think CBS's ratings are dependent on Gayle King at all. Gayle King is going to be just fine. She certainly has, I believe she has Sirius XM and Oprah, her connections with Oprah's different media properties. So she'll be fine. She'll probably start her own podcast. And CBS can maybe start reaching out to a popular conservative journalist or popular conservative, someone who has the media chops to be able to deliver the harder hitting interviews that Gayle King really was. And I mean, at most, she interviewed R. Kelly. That's what people remember her for doing. Other than that, and being Oprah's bestie, nothing else.
According to Variety, Gayle King, who has been the face of CBS News' morning show for more than a decade, is expected to depart as an anchor of the morning program next year. The negotiations are about to ensue just as Paramount is cutting ties with dozens of staffers at CBS News and hundreds more across the larger company. It seems to me that the CBS morning show has always sort of been the third wheel, right? You've got Today, and then you've got Good Morning America, and the two of those shows vie all the time. And obviously, I think our heart belongs to the morning slot, Patrice. We recognize how critically valuable it is and how important it is
to
start the morning news cycle or the daily news cycle with a good morning show. And doing morning news is different than doing prime time or late afternoon, early evening news. I think Don Lemon learned that lesson. Remember when they moved him from prime time to mornings at CNN? And that didn't last long either.
It did not, no.
I think you're right. Whether you get a conservative host or maybe you get a host that actually brings either a different perspective or doesn't politically offend half of America by not being hostile to, because it's like at this point I'm so desperate for a morning show host that doesn't offend my political sensibilities and think that I'm Satan, because over on over on ABC you're going to get George Stephanopoulos.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's your host over there,
David Muir, who's a little bit toned down, but still the very same perspective.
Yeah, but specifically on mornings, starting your day, right, with Good Morning America. And it's such an easy thing to do. And the fact of the matter is, even though CBS Mornings is on a network, Fox and Friends on Fox often outrates and gets better numbers than a network show that has way more clearance across the country than a cable show might have, and certainly higher profile. And again, I don't think CBS's morning show needs to be a conservative morning show. I think it just doesn't need to treat me like I'm a monster, which is what they do.
Well, and the funny thing is you're balancing both news and a little bit of analysis, but also with a lot of the pop culture, the business, finance, all of the different worlds that people think about in the morning. And, I think this is an opportunity for CBS News and frankly for ABC, for NBC. I'm a little less, I don't think NBC will do it, but at least to start to rebalance where the perspectives that they're putting out there, the perspectives of the host, whether the hosts are actually willing to call to the mat the liberal lawmakers and members of Congress that they often have on and actually ask them harder hitting questions. Be fair. We're not even asking, to your point, we're not asking for, a Republican CBS. We're just asking for some fairness there. And I think that there is a movement afoot. I certainly have seen that my work is starting to get picked up in some more liberal outlets. I've been surprised by that, but that's a good thing. And I think that there's a recognition that you can no longer deny that half of America, which voted for President Trump and voted for the current agenda, needs to see that reflected. And then secondly, Larry, thank goodness all of the DEI blackwashing is done. I am so glad to see that we're no longer going to be held hostage by the politics of victimhood, of racial victimhood. And I think, Gayle King dabbled in it, but, I think increasingly we're going to start to see that the erosion of that across these media outlets. Forget MSNBC, though. They're just cold-hearted.
Maybe. I don't know. I mean, let's not forget the Nate Burleson, the former football player, tends to try to shoot every question. He's one of the co-hosts with Gayle King on CBS Morning.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And he is constantly shooting a woke left-wing racial lens on a lot of the questioning that goes on during those segments and those interviews. And by the way, it's funny. For the life of me, I blanked out on who the co-hosts of the Today Show are right now. The Today Show still does well in the ratings, I suppose, but it's Savannah Guthrie and Craig Melvin. I like Craig Melvin. He's a former local D.C. television host, but he moved from local NBC here in Washington to be an MSNBC host middays, and then he was plucked from MSNBC to go to Today Show. And he's, he does his broadcasting, as does Savannah Guthrie, as an MSNBC type focused news anchor. That's what they do. And then when you get to the third hour, they bring in Willie Geist, who literally, is on the Morning Joe set half of the time. This
I
revolving
have no hope
door
for
between...
NBC, Larry.
Yeah.
I really don't.
So, and then again, you get George Stephanopoulos over on ABC. So it's CBS News was smart to bring in Barry Weiss, a new approach to the news, new perspective, and bring in new voices. It's rumored that she wants Scott Jennings. Maybe Scott Jennings, who is a really likable guy on the air and a conservative, maybe he's part of the new reworked morning show if they succeed in getting him over. I don't know, but this is an opportunity. And
it is.
And I think Gayle King has become unwatchable, in my opinion, even though a lot of people like her and just go, oh, she's Oprah's best friend. Yeah, that's not really a great calling card anymore, I don't think.
Exactly.
It's 5:25. What does that mean, Patrice?
All right. We've got an update on Stephen Miller's moving plans. Stay with us. It's O'Connor and Company at 5:30.
WMAL-FM Woodbridge, Washington, a Cumulus media station. Making sense of the news. News Talk 105.9. News now. Now on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
It's 5:37. It's O'Connor and Company. It's Halloween. So wake up and get into a wacky costume, especially one that will be obviously evident on the Beltway as you're commuting in, because that's the best when you're driving into work and you look at the car next to you and it's like, someone dressed like that. No, Patrice Onwuka, dressing like a soccer mom is not a easily you're every woman your age in DC. That's what you're dressed as.
Yeah, it's this stage of life. I mean, I spent, how late we were staying up last night making the vocabulary parade costumes, Larry? I didn't have time for myself.
We will dive into what your children are dressed as today, coming up in a bit. That's Patrice Onwuka. I'm Larry O'Connor. Coming up, a quick rundown. 6:05, Sean Kennedy. 6:35, Delegate Gary Higgins on the election. 7:05, Greg Pemberton of the D.C. Police Union. 7:35, Winsome Sears will be our guest. And then 8:35, Jim Jordan of the House Judiciary Committee. All right, an update on this story we've been covering. You'll remember that we reported a couple of weeks ago that Stephen Miller, the Deputy Chief of Staff for President Trump at the White House, has put his Arlington home up for sale. And it was obviously because his neighbors have been bullying him and his wife and his children. You'll remember a friend of our program, Corey Inganamort, who works at Town Hall Media, used to work here at WMAL, was walking in the neighborhood in Arlington and saw a bunch of angry women chalking the park right adjacent to the Miller's house, saying things like, immigrants make America great. If you tolerate this, all our children will be next, and basically fear-mongering. Miller is preying on...
so ridiculous.
It was just awful. And so they're going after and publicly shaming Stephen Miller and his family. And at the time, the Miller family said, they're not going to bully us. They're not going to intimidate us. And then a couple of weeks later, the house is for sale. And we speculated on the air, Patrice, here that there must be something else going on. There must have been bona fide security threats going on here for them to move out of the neighborhood. And
probably, maybe something very serious.
Yeah, and I think that that's been confirmed now, because not only have the Miller family put their house for sale, but now it's been reported that they are moving to a military base, or have moved to a military base. The violence and threats of violence have grown so bad and so real that Trump administration officials like Stephen Miller, Marco Rubio, and Kristi Noem have now moved their families to live on local military bases so they can be behind military security to be able to protect themselves. This is absolutely a blight on the Washington, D.C. area. And Mayor Bowser should join with the leaders in Alexandria and Arlington and Fairfax County and Montgomery County and Prince George County, and they should all get together and put out joint statements to their radical left-wing voting base and say, we can have disagreements about politics, but this area, the D.C. metro area, needs to be open and welcoming to people of all political stripes who work on Capitol Hill, work in the government, work in the White House. We need to harmonize and live together. That's the whole point of this area. And when people who come to D.C. to work for an administration feel so threatened that they have to hide in a military compound
base,
that's the absolute shame on the local elected officials for not calling out their own for doing this kind of threatening bullying tactic.
Well, this piece in The Atlantic, I think, is great. It's in The Atlantic. I would actually take it a step further, Larry, and say, okay, all the former DHS secretaries, how about putting together a letter that calls for the same thing, that says, as you're serving as a public servant right now for the next 4 years or however long you are, you and your family deserves not to be under the constant threat, a threat so serious that you actually have to move into a military base just to protect your family and yourself. I mean, DHS secretaries, secretaries of defense or war now. I mean, I think that there should be enough bipartisan support from people who have held these jobs, understand the security that's that they place themselves and their families in when taking on the this kind of public service. They should be able to at least coalesce around a letter or an opinion piece to say, yes, we agree this should not be happening to officials, even if we disagree with the policies or the politics. Right?
You're 100% right. And you're right. It is a good article in The Atlantic. Let me read the opening. Former White House advisor Katie Miller, mother of 3 young children, wife of Stephen, walked out of her front door one Thursday morning last month and was confronted by a woman who she did not know. When she told the story on Fox News, she described the encounter as a protest that crossed a line. The stranger had told Miller, "I'm watching you," she said. This was the day after Charlie Kirk's assassination. For weeks before
Oh, my
Kirk's death,
goodness.
activists had been protesting the Millers' presence in North Arlington, Virginia. We told you about the chalking incident, but apparently also
Yes.
they had been putting up posters in the neighborhood with Miller's face dressed like a Nazi. They had said
My
things.
goodness.
They had also put out posters that said he organized campaigns of dehuman. Oh no, excuse me. Hang on. When Miller, the architect of that response, who is known for his inflammatory political rhetoric, announced a legal crackdown on liberal groups, he singled out the tactics that had victimized his family, saying it was organized campaigns of dehumanization, vilification, posting people's addresses, and now it appears, 6 members of the White House senior staff are now living in military housing. They did not reveal where the Millers had moved. Kristi Noem is living in the home designated for the Coast Guard Commandant at Joint Base Anacostia Bowling, and both Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth are living in Generals Row at Fort McNair. Atrocious. Absolutely atrocious. And it all goes back to the assassination.
I think about the
of
families,
Charlie Kirk.
Larry.
Of course. And as much as you want to stay
I think
and be
about
bold
the kids.
you want to stand up to these bullies, but after seeing what happened to Charlie Kirk, it's kind of hard to look your wife in the eyes and say, "It's fine, honey." That it's just a lot of talk.
I think about the families. I think about the spouses who didn't sign up to have to leave their home because of the ridiculous threats being made against them, separate from probably the harassment they receive, and the children. I mean, it's one thing when you're the first daughter, first son, and you're moving into the White House, or the second daughter of the second family. But this is different. These are administration officials who cycle in and out of an administration. So what happens after? After, let's say you leave and you resign your post, or 4 years from now, what happens? Are you now still going to be the target of violent leftist rhetoric?
Yeah,
right? That's something that you have to think about too.
For the rest of their lives, they will be, and that's part of the ploy here, is to intimidate and bully people from coming and working for the Trump administration. In the first Trump administration, they did it by bullying and intimidating people, suggesting that they were going to be indicted co-conspirators in the attempted coup and the stealing of the election and Russian collusion. This time around, they're just threatening them with assassination. But it's
so sick.
That's what they do. That's what the left has done in the history of the political left in our world and in our society. Prayers to the Miller family. They deserve better than this.
Hey, it's Chris Plant. Find out what the media don't want you to know. Coming up this morning at 9, right here on WMAL.
Yes, I
know. This whole shutdown, obviously, is a result of Democrats' unprecedented, and I do mean absolutely unprecedented, ahistorical attempts to keep the government shut down for their own leverage and for their own political purposes. Because at no time that I can remember, the reason I say it's unprecedented, ahistorical, is that usually the logjam for a government shutdown has to do with the bill that's being proposed to keep the government funded. That has a bunch of different sort of, poison pills and little sort of ugly little strings attached to it. It's like, if you want to keep the government funded, then you got to go vote for this thing that you probably hate too. But that's the only way we keep the government funded. That's not the case here. Usually the solution to a government funding standoff is that they get a clean, continuing resolution to keep the prior government's funding going until they can work out a resolution. In this case, they began with that clean bill, the clean continuing resolution, continuing Biden-era funding. By the way,
they've voted for 13 times, Larry. Same bill.
Including this March, while President Trump was president and with this same congressional makeup. So that's unprecedented. Never done that before. But the reason that the Senate is able to do that, the Democrats in the Senate are able to do that, is because, of course, of the cloture rules. You have to get 60 votes. So you either get a majority of your party that gets to 60, which rarely happens, or you need to get enough reasonable people from the other political party to say, well, yes, of course, we'll go ahead and move this thing along. And Democrats have not done that. There are many people speculating that the reason that the Democrats, one of the reasons Democrats are insisting on this and keeping the government shut down, is that they want to force John Thune, the Republican majority leader, to suspend the rules on cloture and basically what they call the nuclear option, to do away with the 60-vote threshold. They're playing this game of chicken to force John Thune to do that so that the precedent is set, and then when the Democrats are in power, they will do whatever they want without the 60 votes.
Yeah.
Because don't forget, last time they had the majority in the Senate and the House, they flirted with the idea of giving Puerto Rico statehood and giving D.C. statehood and changing the makeup of the Supreme Court and on and on and on. And the only thing stopping them was Joe Manchin, Kyrsten Sinema, and the 60-vote threshold that kept them from doing that. So that's sort of one of the backstories here. Here's an interesting wrinkle. Yesterday, Donald Trump on Truth Social basically called for the end of the filibuster, the end of the cloture rules. He said, enough of this. Stop. We have the majority. Screw them. Let's just do away with it. And I don't know. I understand his frustration, but I don't know if that's a good idea.
I don't think it's a good idea. I don't think it's helpful right now. I think Democrats have been this was going to be their last stand this weekend with the expiration of the SNAP benefits for 42 million Americans, and they were losing the messaging war, and so it would have been tough to see SNAP benefits ended tomorrow, but I think it would have forced Democrats to abandon their ridiculous position and, vote for a bill they voted for 13 times before, which Republicans have in the past have joined them on and show the same bipartisanship. And so now that President Trump has said this, then I think it gives them more leverage to say, oh, well, the big guy has spoken. You guys need to listen. We're not going to do anything because until we're going to look to you to continue to do it. And we will see what happens as a result. I can imagine Senator Thune and a majority leader, or House Speaker Johnson are probably like with their hands in their heads right now. Heads in their hands.
I get it, but also Trump usually has pretty good political instincts, and he makes a compelling argument. He says, listen, he recognizes that Democrats were more than willing to do that. More than willing to do that when they were in power, and it was only Manchin and Sinema that kept them from doing it. He said, now we're in power. If we did what we should be doing, it would immediately end the ridiculous country-destroying shutdown. If the Democrats ever came back into power, the Democrats would exercise their rights, and it would be done the first day they take office, regardless of whether or not we do it. In addition to all the other things we would get, such as the best judges and best U.S. attorneys and the best of everything. This was a concept from years ago of when President Barack Hussein Obama and former Majority Leader Harry Reid, in order to take advantage of the Republicans, now I want to do it in order to take advantage of the Democrats. So that may be the way this ends, but I don't know if that necessarily is a good thing for the future. That 60-vote cushion has worked on both sides of the equation to keep the other party from doing whatever they want.
And you at some point you do need a level of measure of bipartisanship, and actually in this spending fight we have seen 3 Democrats or 2 independents who caucus with Democrats vote with Republicans. So it's possible to move a few more. You probably need 4 or 5 more to do so. I think the pressure has been on them, and this is like a little bit of a pressure valve release to release some of that pressure. So this may be how it ends up ending. We will see. But,
It's 5:55.